Hello everyone, my name is Eddie Bolen. I'm the pastor at Midway United Methodist Church. I'm also a pastor at Edgewater United Methodist Church. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for watching this video. I also want to wish all of you a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed doing is getting out a little bit. There's just been absolutely beautiful weather for this time. But one of the things that we've been doing together as a church over this month of November is we've been talking about what does it mean to have church as a team sport. So that's what I want to share in this particular video, is to talk about what does it mean to have church as a team sport. And I want to share with you three just really powerful tools that we have discovered along the way for when you get ready for game day. And for a few weeks, this has been a big conversation that's been in both of the churches that I've served. It's also been a conversation I've had in some other places too, to say that church is a team sport. Matthew chapter 28, this is where I get this. This is where this idea about church as a team sport comes from. Matthew chapter 28 says this, that our mission as a church, that the mission, and that's not only in the churches that I serve, but is the mission of every single church that follows Jesus Christ, is that we have a mission to make disciples of all nations for the transformation of the world. Ephesians chapter 4. So Matthew chapter 28 tells us this is what Jesus says. Jesus says, this is the reason that you exist. This is the mission that you have to make disciples of all nations for the transformation of the world. Ephesians chapter 4 talks about once that is put into place, and there are people that are a part of a community that is a church, and people are coming together. Ephesians chapter 4 says that God gifts the people that are doing that, the people who are making disciples, what we think about as a church. And with those gifts are, well, there are apostles, there are pastors, there are teachers, there are prophets, there are evangelists, and they are given for one reason. They are given to equip the saints for the work of ministry. That is the people that are a part of the church. And so the church is a team. Comes from Matthew chapter 28, the mission of it, and also that to equip the saints for the work of ministry from Ephesians chapter 4. And so when people hear a call to become a disciple of Jesus, and they begin to follow that call, and when saints, and those saints who are people just like me and you are a saint, is the way that the scriptures refer to us. But saints, people just like you, when you are equipped to face everything in the world as a disciple of Jesus. And so like any team, we all get ready for game days. And so what does it look like when the church as a team is winning on game day? How do you know that a church is winning? Well, you know this when people are connected, when they're reconnected, and when they are all in with Jesus and are equipped to face whatever may happen to them. That's how you know that they're winning on game day. And this is where I want to do something. I want to pull back the curtain a little bit, because I want to let you know that you can be on this team with no prior experience. You see, church as a team sport, there are no tryouts, there's no weight training. Doesn't matter how fast you can run. Doesn't matter what you can run the 440 in. Yeah, this is football season. But it doesn't matter if you can run the 440 under 50 seconds or if you can do it in 10 minutes. It doesn't matter, because these three tools that I'm going to talk about that the church has, these are three of the most powerful tools that the church as a team sport has when we go into the field on game day, and you can start those. You can have those in your own personal life, whether you are a part of a church or whether you are not part of a church, whether you are part of a church that is meeting in person right now, or if you are part of a church that is meeting virtually, or if you're watching a video just like this. You can be part of church as a team sport. And those three tools, three of the most powerful tools that emerge on game day for church to function and to live together as a team, is peace, forward motion, and God's Spirit. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about each one of those. All of them are given to us. The peace, forward motion, and God's Spirit, all of them are given to us by Jesus when he was in this space, this kind of unique space between heaven and earth. John chapter 20 in the New Testament offers in verse 19 through 23 that in the evening of Jesus' resurrection, so Jesus has been killed, he's been buried, and he has risen from the dead. But on the night that Jesus was risen from the dead, in his resurrection, he stood in the midst of the disciples to equip them for what they would begin facing next. These tools are so powerful that they continue to equip people just like you to go out on the field for game day, even more than 2,000 years later. Now, there's some really important context on this first evening of the resurrection, because 3 days before, Jesus has been arrested, Jesus has been publicly executed, and then Jesus has risen from the dead. And he meets the disciples on this evening. That very night that he rises from the dead, he meets the disciples on this very evening to equip them for what lies ahead of them and to send them onto the field for their own game day. And they have fear that is all around them. One of the things that you notice if you take a look, and I encourage you to do this, in John chapter 20, starting at verse 19 through 23, you'll notice that the disciples are together, the doors are locked, they're all huddled together, and really beginning to ask themselves, could what happened to Jesus be coming for us? Could we be arrested like that? Could we face a trial like that? Could we even be executed like that? And Jesus offers the first tool inside this demoralized, kind of frightened locker room before they go out onto the field. He says, peace be with you. Now, this is not just a greeting that Jesus is offering the disciples, nor is it just this kind of comfort where Jesus is saying, peace be with you, in an attempt to sort of calm their fears. When Jesus speaks, peace be with you, he is inviting them to remember. And what they are in fact remembering is a time that is recorded in John chapter 14. So a time before his arrest, before his trial, before their last meal together, Jesus began to speak about his own death and said the peace that will come after he is no longer with them, the peace that will happen after his death, that when he is no longer present with them, that it will be vital for them to begin to tap into that peace that Jesus has promised would be present with them. It is the peace that Jesus gives, and it is a peace that Jesus says, I give you this peace, not as the world gives. So when you remember this peace as God gives, this becomes a really powerful tool, because this kind of peace is more powerful than fear. This kind of peace is more powerful than uncertainty about the future. And with this literal out-of-the-world peace, Jesus leads us into the second really powerful tool that emerges. And that is that church as a team sport functions when we're moving forward in this kind of forward motion. What we often describe as the church, we have one word where we describe this kind of forward motion. We call it sending, or being sent. After the resurrection, after this peace that is literally outside this world, Jesus says this, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. And armed with this out-of-the-world peace, and now face-to-face with Jesus, who only 72 hours ago was crucified on the cross, Jesus says, I want you to go. Now, all teams had to go on the road, right? All teams had to go out, and they had to venture away from their hometown fans. They had to venture out of their familiar stadiums, the locker rooms that smell exactly the way that they like them, all of those things that they enjoy most about their lives. All teams have to go out. You had to venture off of your home field. You had to travel. You had to go on the road. And this is what Jesus is inviting the disciples to do, those people who are huddled together, that they go out from their own hometown fans. As one hymn writer described it in this way, he says that with the church, and he never uses, it would be great if he used that phrase of that church as a team, but he never uses that phrase, but he says this. He says, we have a story to tell to the nations. And it comes directly from this kind of sending that Jesus is offering, this forward motion that Jesus is giving to his disciples who are scared, who are frightened. Jesus reminds us of the urgency of sharing this message, this story that we do have to tell to the nations. I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine a team that is well trained and equipped to face any challenge that is thrown at their team, and yet week after week, they never venture out. They're training, they're practicing, they're exercising, and week after week, they just stay on their own home field, never venturing out of the closed and the locked doors where they are huddled together because they're too fearful about what's outside. This is precisely the place that the disciples find themselves. And Jesus realizes it. Jesus realizes this is what is happening with them. And knowing that if they do not start the journey of moving forward now, then there's a potential that they'll never venture out of those locked doors. And it really is. I mean, can you begin to imagine how tempting it is just to stay on your own home field? Can you imagine how tempting it is, well, really just to stay in your own home? To stay in the place that you're familiar with, the place that you love the most. It's tempting for all of us to want to stay on our own home field, believing that we're not quite ready to venture out. I mean, have you ever felt that way before? That, as soon as you're a little bit better equipped, as soon as you're a little bit better trained, then you can venture out. As soon as you are taken care of, then we can begin to move out, that we can go out from beyond our own home field, believing that, we're just not quite ready to go out. And then when we do go out and we're sent out, as Jesus says, we begin to ask ourselves, was it really worth it? All that time, all that money, all that getting ready and going out, was that really worth it? And thinking certainly we can't make this sending, we can't make this forward motion, we can't make this going out, we can't make this kind of forward motion that Jesus says is a really powerful tool. We can't make it a part of our lifestyle, right? It's like a little boy. And maybe you've heard this story before, but I love this story. It's like a little boy who went to kindergarten. And if you can imagine this, he got on the bus the very first day, left his home after breakfast, got on the bus and went on the bus and rode to kindergarten. On his very first day, came home and hugged both of his parents when he came in the door. And was so excited about his teacher, was so excited about his classroom, was so excited about everything that happened in school, was beyond excited about the friends that he was beginning to make and the food that he had in the lunchroom and everything like that, and just overjoyed about it and said, yes, I loved every minute of that day, but you know what? One day was enough. I'm not going to go back tomorrow. I'm not going to take a second day at kindergarten. I'm done. I'm finished with school. It was great to go out one time, but you know what? I like it here at home so much better. All of us have that tendency, and it can be really tempting. But one of the most powerful tools that we have as a team together as a church, and it's one that Jesus has directly invited us to go into, is to be sent. It's to go out. Jesus, recognizing how tempting it may be for all of us to just want to stay in and only play in our own home field, Jesus says, I'm sending you. And he says, this is what I'm going to be sending you with, the Spirit of God. It's what we recognize. This is the third most powerful tool that we have, the Spirit of God. It's what we recognize in the church as the Holy Spirit. We recognize that there is a Father, that there is a Son who is Jesus Christ, Father being God, the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. This is a tremendous power that many of us already on the team have felt in church, and that is the power that comes through the Holy Spirit is the power of forgiveness. Just listen to Jesus' words. These are Jesus' exact words that he gives, John chapter 20, verse 23. I want you to receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained. John 20, verse 23. And I want you to think about this for a minute. I want you to pause just for a second. If you've got an opportunity to do this, particularly on this video, go ahead and pause it. Literally pause it. Well, not yet. I want to ask this question. But when is the last time that you reflected on the sheer power the church as a team has through the Holy Spirit when it comes to forgiveness? And hit pause and just reflect on that. It's one thing that I was having a personal conversation with somebody not too long ago. We were having a conversation about unworthiness, and some people and this kind of feeling of unworthiness, and I had to take a moment to pause and to pray and say, Lord, help me to see the sheer power that we have together as a team. Help me to see this power when it comes particularly to forgiveness. Psalm 103 says this. It's the Old Testament, it's a Hebrew scripture psalm, but Psalm 103 says this, that as far as the east is from the west, that is how far God has removed the transgressions from our own lives in God's presence. I want you to just imagine that this is the opportunity that we have together as a team. This is the opportunity that we have together as church, as a team sport, to offer forgiveness, to offer the forgiveness that comes through God, inspired by the power of the Holy Spirit, to those who feel unworthy, to offer forgiveness to those who can't even begin to forgive themselves, to offer God's forgiveness in real and concrete ways that shows God's love and demonstrates God's love to them immediately, making a difference in their lives immediately. And to fully know that on the other side of that, to fully know, to withhold forgiveness from ourselves or from our friends, or even the most rival team that is across town that we don't even enjoy too much saying their name. But to imagine that to withhold this kind of forgiveness can have terrible consequences, resulting in our own retention of sins. Not only have we failed to forgive someone else, but we find that we retain that kind of sin in our own life. And that's really powerful too. That's a whole other sermon. But that is, in fact, the way this forgiveness happens in our lives together as a church, in our lives together personally as followers and disciples of Jesus Christ, that if we withhold that kind of forgiveness, it actually gets stuck in us. We retain that kind of sin too. I mean, to forgive as God has forgiven us it is really, truly a powerful tool for game day. And surely, if you are anything like me, it takes the power of God's Holy Spirit interceding in your life to offer that kind of forgiveness. But I did want to really emphasize how vital that is and how important that is. And so there it is. We have three. Comes from Jesus, the first evening of his resurrection. Three powerful tools for game day. And I want to really encourage you that whether this is a short week for you as you look toward Thanksgiving, or if this is a wide open Thanksgiving week when you don't even get that much of a break. These are some really powerful tools that the church as a team has. And personally, these can be some of the most powerful tools that you can use starting today, making today your own game day. And it all starts with out of this world kind of peace, fueled by a call of forward motion or sending out, and culminating in a forgiveness that can free you and others from the retention of sins. And so I just want you to begin to reflect. I want you to ask yourself, which one are you going to start with? Which is going to be the one that you are going to focus on, and you're going to say, you know what, that's my number one. That's the one that I'm going to start with. And then also, when is game day going to be? When is your game day going to happen? When are you going to take that game day and say, you know what, not just going to start with peace or the Holy Spirit and forgiveness. I'm just going to start with sending out. But you know what? I'm going to tackle them all. Because I promise you that if you begin with all three of them and say, this is your game day, you'll be amazed at how powerful these tools really are. I do thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has been extraordinarily helpful. I encourage you, take a look at John chapter 20. Look at Jesus. Look at Jesus' life that evening of the resurrection. They are powerful tools that emerge from there, and they are powerful tools that we can use on any game day in our lives. Well, I do pray that you have a blessed Thanksgiving. I pray that God's grace will surround you. May God's blessings be upon you as you eat together at tables with families and with friends. And let us all be mindful of those who on Thanksgiving, as well as lots of other days, are unable to eat together with family and friends. And let's be mindful of those who, for many, where food is insecure and inadequate. And may we work together in the power of the Holy Spirit, with the power of peace and also the power of sending out, to enable us to work toward the mission where all will be fed, both spiritually as well as physically. Well, happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and may God's blessings offer you a blessed Thanksgiving. Thanks again for watching.